I hope that after watching this video, you will feel confident in being able to multiply and divide numbers in scientific notation. So we're going to start by going through the steps and then doing 4 examples together. 2 examples multiplying numbers in scientific notation and 2 examples dividing numbers in scientific notation. The process is actually pretty straightforward, so let's go ahead and get started here. So in this first example, you'll notice that we are multiplying these 2 numbers, and I know that we're multiplying because they are surrounded by parentheses. And remember, parentheses next to parentheses means multiplication. So I'm going to go ahead and start by highlighting the coefficients, 2 and 3. And then I'm going to use a different color to highlight the powers of 10. And according to the commutative property of multiplication, we are allowed to change the order in which we multiply numbers. So let's go ahead, and our first step is going to be to multiply the coefficients. So you can see that we have a 2 and a 3. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply those 2 numbers together, and I get 6. The next step would be to go ahead and multiply the powers of 10 from each of the numbers that you have in scientific notation. So the power of 10 in the first number is 10 to the 3rd power, and the power of 10 in the second number is 10 to the 4th power. Remember, in some of the last few lessons, you learned about the product of powers property. And with the product of powers property, when you are multiplying and your bases are the same, you're allowed to add the exponents. So when I do that, I get 10 to the power of 3 plus 4. And I know that 3 plus 4 is 7, so my new power of 10 is 10 to the 7th power. So now I'm going to rewrite as the product of my coefficients, which is the 6, and the product of my powers of 10, which is 10 to the 7th. And I'm going to go ahead and write that as an expression in scientific notation. Now, sometimes when you follow these steps, you're going to get a product that's not in scientific notation, and you're going to have to convert it so that it is. Lucky for us, in this first example, there's only one number here, 6 or 6.0 times 10 to the 7th power. So the answer that we just got is already in scientific notation. Let's go ahead and look at example 2, which is another example of multiplying numbers in scientific notation. So once again, I'm going to highlight my coefficients because those are the numbers that I'm going to multiply together first. 5 times 6, which I know is 30. Then I'm going to multiply my powers of 10. My first power of 10 is 10 to the negative 2nd power. My second one is 10 to the positive 5th power. Remember, when you learned about the product of powers property, you learned that when your bases are the same number, you can add your exponents. So 10 to the power of negative 2 times 10 to the power of positive 5 means I'm going to add the negative 2 and the 5 together to get an exponent of 3. So that would be simplified as 10 to the 3rd power. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and take the coefficient, the product of the coefficients that I just got, and I'm going to take the product of the powers of 10 that I got, and I'm going to put them together as an expression. 30 times 10 to the 3rd power. Now this one's a little bit tricky because this one is not in scientific notation. So what I have to do is I have to rewrite it in scientific notation. So one way that I can do that is first, because remember, scientific notation has to have just one number to the left of the decimal. So what I could do is I could actually just take this number 30 and rewrite it in scientific notation as 3.0 times 10 to the 1st power. But I already have that 10 to the 3rd power, so I've got to multiply that as well. So now I've got my decimal in the correct place, 3.0 or just 3. And I'm going to use the product of powers property again, where I add my exponents. So my final answer in scientific notation would be 3 times 10 to the 4th power. Also, if you find this step a little bit difficult and confusing, another strategy would be to go ahead and write that number in standard form. So 30 times 10 to the 3rd power, I could go ahead and I'm going to move the decimal 1, 2, 3 places, and I could write it in standard form, which is 30,000, and then write it in scientific notation. So choose the method that makes the most sense to you.